time changes based on your state.
Yes, mental state, I would say.
Yeah,
Like
your
like
mental
doing
state.
like doing a plank. That's how you make time stay forever.
What are
60
you
seconds. If you
talking about?
plank, time just goes on
Oh,
forever.
no,
Yeah.
that
What do
how
you
to
think I
freeze?
meant? How
No,
to
dude,
freeze time?
imagine the dumbest superpower. You can freeze time, but you have to plank for 60 seconds first. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but so like when you're doing something that's not. Hey guys, what's up? This is week 7 of the podcast, I believe now,
Yes,
and
week
today we're
7.
gonna be talking about time, but not just time, but space as well. As in, it's gonna be more physics-heavy concepts today, but also linking towards like more sci-fi elements or pop culture-ish elements. So yeah, maybe it'll be too nerdy, but maybe it'll be something that interests you. Or we should start at what it is. What do you think
What
it
time
is?
it is? Okay. Yeah.
What time? No, not what time it is.
No, it is at
What time it is
8:33.
right now?
Ah, yes.
No. Seriously, like what time is? Everybody can answer what time it is, but
Yeah.
as soon as you ask someone what time is,
Mhm,
like what?
mhm.
You know what
I mean,
So-
time is an interesting concept because like a lot of people believe that time is just a concept that was created by man to keep track of what we're doing. But I mean, it's an interesting concept on its own because it kind of already exists whether or not we label it with something. It's the events that are occurring, what has already occurred, what's happening now, and what's happening in the future. It's quite hard to explain because it's a theory and a concept that has been explored and still is being explored in the area of physics for a long period of time. And frankly, we don't really have much of a definitive answer, but we have many
it's
theories.
weird because the word time is in itself an axiom, so you can't describe it using other things, I would say. So like time describes itself. You can't, like, if somebody asks you to explain time, what are you gonna say? Like, method
Yes.
of keeping track of time.
Yeah.
So it just goes in a circle, but time is just basically our way of measure.
Of ordering,
This-
of having
No.
events. It's just like
Yeah, it's a way of keeping track of events or the past and the future, things like that. It's very difficult to explain, but it's like something.
The thing
one of
is,
things
like,
that everybody accepts.
yeah, we accept it and we kind of just go with it. But if you just stop and ask people what it is, you just kind of confused.
Yeah,
Right?
I think there was some famous quote for somebody, like the one I just mentioned. Like that was a quote by somebody. Like you can ask someone what time it is, and they'll
yeah.
answer. But if you ask them what time is, they won't have an answer. That was the quote by someone that I stole. Like we have the definition, but it's difficult to put into words, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the interesting thing is that because of the way our senses work, right, and the way we experience the world, we can only validate it within ourselves, right? So
yeah.
there's no way to know if reality wouldn't, like we previously talked about, right, reality actually exists, or whether we're experiencing it as it actually exists, or whether it's just a product of our own experience, correct?
Yeah.
So time could be something that actually exists, like tangibly, or reality could just exist like as like movie film slices. That's what they call it. So like every single instant already exists all at once, but we're just moving through the films, if you know what I'm saying. And that is our experience of time.
Yeah, that is what a lot of people claim time is. It's that the past, the present, and the future all exist at the same time. You know, I mean, saying time again. You know what I mean? But I guess another way of saying time is moment.
You shouldn't say time. You should, moment or instantaneously. Something like that.
Yep.
So something interesting again is that time is relative. Obviously, you know, right? Being physics student or whatever. but also time is relative not only physically through physics. So if you're faster, is it time slows down?
Slower. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, individually or mentally, time changes based on your state.
Yes, mental state. I would say,
yeah,
like
your mental
doing
state.
like doing a plank. That's how you make time stay forever. 60
What are you
seconds.
talking
If you
about?
plank, time just goes on forever.
Oh no! That,
Yeah. What do you think I meant? How to freeze time?
imagine the dumbest superpower. You can freeze time, but you have to plank for 60 seconds first. Oh yeah. But so, like, when you're doing something that's not that entertaining, the time gets stretched out, right? But when you're having fun, like, this is a concept well known, right? People mention it. But time, as Matthew says, time flies when you're having
fun.
So so your experience of time is different depending on your mental state, and that could be credence or evidence towards the fact that time itself is a man-made concept.
Yeah.
Because you see, like, things made by man are usually not solidly defined. They're like a bit inaccurate. Like, for example, emotions, I wouldn't say inaccurate, but the words itself don't accurately describe the emotions you're feeling.
Yep.
Or maybe, many other different things invented by humans don't actually represent different things, or like, how languages are just a man-made concept, and even though communication exists, languages are a man-made concept and doesn't like represent meaning correctly. So what do you think?
No, that's completely correct. I mean, like, we create some definitions that we cannot have a exact definition, if you know what I mean. Like, exactly like what you said, like, we can't an emotion, we can't exactly describe an emotion. You have to feel it in order to completely understand what it is. And similarly, you have to sense time to be able to understand or just to experience what it is really.
Oh, you're saying some good stuff here.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
You have to experience those things before you truly understand what the word means.
Which is like, generally why, like, when you explain these kind of terms to kids or children, they tend to not understand. But once they start to learn, that's why we can't go from 0 to 100, right? Just like you said, we have to go from we have to climb up steps slowly, because we have to have past experiences in order to have enough substance to understand something. And potentially that's what the concept of time could apply to what we're looking at here or exploring, which is what I actually think might be, not as a physicist at least.
I feel like this is why teaching, especially to those who don't have much understanding, well, I'm not to be pretentious, but to those who have a much more simple understanding of how things work, is actually a good not only a good way of learning, but a good test of your knowledge itself. Because whether you're able to explain a concept to different levels of understanding, really pays credence to whether you understand
it or not. Yep.
Just like what Einstein says, right?
Exactly.
It's easy. Any idiot can make something more complicated, but it takes a genius and something beautiful to make it more
simple. Yeah. I mean, we need explainers like Richard Feynman to be able to explain some like complex idea to like some. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos on this, like three different stages of intelligence, like a primary kid, a college student, and like a senior, and this physicist comes and explains general relativity to each one of them.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. That was pretty interesting, because like it does definitely show how much you understand or know about that area specifically, just by testing how you can explain something to other people who have less knowledge in that certain area. And time could be the same way. That's why, like, you say old people are more wise because they have more understanding and they've had more time to live their life compared to like people like us who have less time. Like we've only spent 18 years in this world. Like people, they're usually more experienced and more wise would be the perfect word for that. Which I think now we can go to time travel because it kind of leads in interestingly.
Wait. Something I think I watched a video on this before. So it was like some guy talking about time and like how much time you have in your life or whatever. By the way, shout out to time in general. Is I think a book that I mentioned in episode 1 is Shortness on Life.
Shortness of Life
by Seneca. But read that if you still haven't. But basically he talks about how we shouldn't measure age or like age is basically worthless, right? It's just how many years you've lived on the earth. Well, it's not completely worthless, but then again, back to my point, like age is technically just how many years you've lived on the earth, not necessarily a measure of value. So if there's like two people, both 60 years old, one person who's gone off and experienced different things, gone through many hardships, versus someone who is a sheltered kid, spoon fed by their parents, whatever, didn't do much, always stayed in their home. Who do you think is older? Well, most people would say they're the same age, right? But I'd say that the guy who's gone out and experienced many different things is actually older, because relative to the other person, they've experienced much more, and so there's more value in the or sort of like more more knowledge, more wisdom, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is kind of weird saying it after your birthday, but it's like this is
yeah. No. Completely understand.
This is why when it comes to my birthday, I'm just like, oh, it's just a birthday, But a birthday is a birthday, but like we.
Yeah, no, completely. Like I don't know for what reason, but my mom today, I was talking with her. And I was like, Mom, you're 39 this year. Next year you're 40. And I'm like, you're officially gonna be old. And she's like, no, age is just a number. I'm not gonna be old. And I'm like, that was an interesting thought. While you could say age is just a number, like there are some things that, like exactly how you described, Kev. There are some things that one could experience that another with the same age couldn't. Or there's some things that people who are younger could experience, and they could still be older. If you know what I mean.
You don't measure how well you've lived your life by your age, but how you lived it.
Exactly.
And that's the most important.
Wise words. Those are nice. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then that's one of the things that a lot of people are not understanding nowadays. You're like, if a person, let's say of our age, accomplishes something, they're like, oh, quite young, he's done that. But at the same time, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. You can still do things and follow your life without having to chase time. People are like thinking, oh, I can only get married at 26, or I can only go to college at like 18. Well, I guess, but like at the same time, we have our own timeline, like, if you know what I mean.
I think it's more like people are like, I don't know if I'm old enough to like basically like you said, right? I don't know if I'm old enough yet to get children. I don't know if I'm old enough yet to invest in this. I don't know if I'm old enough to get into my hobby. The things you really want to do may not actually be there when you can or want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why people say there's no better time than now. Or I'm not sure if that's the exact wording, but people say that, and it's kind of true. Because like by the time you finish your doubts and you clear them up, you might just lose the opportunity or that window of opportunity. So I guess
it's just like brings me back to an anecdote by my grandma. Like when she was in college or back in the day, she wanted a Vespa, right? And she doesn't have the money. But now she has the money. She can buy a Vespa whenever she wants. But it's not like she's gonna buy a Vespa and go like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So. Bit late now, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but because you've had more experience with relativity, I think you can go off and try to explain the concept in more detail before we go into time travel. So we can talk about space and time and.
Well, the interesting thing about relativity is that it's relative, meaning that it differs from each person's experience. So if I'm observing something, that will be unique to me compared to that person I'm that I'm observing. It'll be different for them. So let me explain to you how relatively roughly works. So let's say I have twins. Let's say I have twins, all right? One is on Earth, and I send the other one on a rocket ship to space. When the twin comes back, both the twins are measured in terms of their age. The twin who went to space finds out that the twin on Earth is much older than him. Now, the reason the twin on Earth is much older is because the twin in space was traveling really fast. And because they were traveling really fast, time became slow to them. Because when you travel fast, everything around you is it's much slower. So because of that, they age less. Because time is slow, so you age less. And by the time he comes back, he finds out that the twin is actually the twin on Earth is older than him. But now this could just be like by a millisecond or two. This is actually done with the Scott Kelly twin, the Kelly twins. Scott Kelly and the other one, I'm not really sure.
The two astronauts.
Yeah, one was sent to the ISS.
One was taller.
The one was older, and they did have biological differences because they did some testing of their body before they sent one, and after they came back. But basically, this twin, I think it was Scott Kelly, went to space for like a year, stayed in the ISS, and when he came back, they found out that he was not only a bit older, like a few milliseconds older than his twin on Earth, but also developed different biological stuff, such as he was less young, as in like he had less skin wrinkles compared to his brother on Earth, and stuff like that. It was really interesting. There's actually a case on NASA that you could read, and it kind of vaguely explained what relativity is, but even up to date, it's quite hard to explain what relativity is, given that.
Well, I think that this like the simplest thing you can do to explain the concept is it just balances out. Space and time both balance out. So if you're traveling quickly in space, then you're traveling slowly in time. If you're traveling quickly in time, you're traveling slowly in space.
Yep.
That's good, right?
Which follows, as well as it follows the physics, the laws of physics. Needs to be
so
a
now
balance.
we can go into time traveling, right?
Yes.
Whether or not time travel is actually possible or not, that's still up to debate, because we still don't have a time machine.
It is.
I don't even know whether it's good to have a time machine or not, which we'll explore in a bit. So there are a lot of early references in pop culture. So you go to I don't know, the earliest one I know is Back to the Future. That's it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are ones before that, but the Back to the Future is the one that is well known to everybody.
Yeah. So, and then obviously if you've watched the Back to the Future, you know about the grandfather paradox. You know, like if you go back to the past and kill your grandfather or something like that, then you won't exist, because your grandfather birthed your dad and your dad birthed you, and then if you kill your grandfather, then your dad doesn't exist and you doesn't exist, right? So that's a paradox, right? How the universe solves that, it shouldn't make sense in real life, right?
Yeah.
But in movies, the way they do it is the guy just dies, right? Because he's basically not supposed to exist. So yeah, and maybe you can continue.
Yeah. Again, like most of these sci-fi movies usually make up their own science based on the time. Usually, like a bit of what they use is quite accurate. Like if you were to change or alter something in the past, yes, there would be a difference in the future, but not in the way that is shown in films usually. Like
well, we don't know, right?
I mean, I guess we don't know, but like with with a lot of research done, supposedly it's not exactly how it works, which is why, like, actually I've read a lot of things that apparently you can't even go back in time, only to the future. That's what because you can't reverse time, right? That's what people are saying. Like I've seen a lot of read a lot of these books, which we'll go back to later, and a lot of these articles by these scholars and universities, and they're saying like, well, it shouldn't be possible like following the laws of physics, because you can't have negative time or reverse time. How do you run back in time, right? That shouldn't be possible. You can probably go forward in time because you can go fast, but you can't go reverse the speed. If you know, yeah, I think you guys, you know what I mean, right?
How about you go forward in time to a time when there exist time machines that can go back in time?
Yeah, that's possible. But yeah, that's smart.
By that time, we might have already been dead. So like,
yeah, true. I'm going to now give an example to when we have supposed time travelers living amongst us. One of the example was in called the Chaplin's Time Traveler. In 2010, a filmmaker uploaded a video clip from Charlie Chaplin's film called The Circus, where there's this woman who was walking with a device that looked like a phone, like a tiny black phone. And this movie was released in 1928, where I can tell you they did not have small phones that looked like this. And but again, it could just be something that was doctored. But according to the sources, it was apparently from a bonus stuff. You know how when you buy DVDs like Blu-rays, you get extra bonus scenes and that kind of stuff. Apparently it was part of that bonus scene you got from this film, and they had it up on there, which was pretty interesting actually. Like people having, it could just be because the photo isn't that clear either. That clip.
That's the thing.
Most of these things, like even UFO sightings, people have the most crappiest resolution, and they're like, "Oh, look, it's a UFO." Or
it's like why are all the conspiracy theory stuff captured on crappy cameras?
Yeah.
You can't actually see what it could be like that effect again, like confirmation bias, right? You're looking for, I don't know if it's exactly that, but you're looking for something and you basically find it, right? So there's also this thing in audio, right, where people reverse it and then they're like, oh, it's demonic because you can hear blah blah blah. Because I thought this too back in the day, you know. Kids are very impressionable, so back in the day I thought this too, you know, you reverse it, demonic stuff. But it's actually, you can only hear those things if somebody tells you that you're gonna hear it.
Yeah.
So for example, if I play you like this backwards audio of something, some rock band or whatever, and then you'll be like, okay, so what? You don't hear anything, right? But then if I say like, oh, you at 10 seconds you're gonna hear somebody say demon or something, then you'll listen, and then those sounds that are basically unintelligible, your brain will basically try to dig out and basically create that sound out of nowhere.
Yeah. Just like those the Laurel and Yanny, the blue dress, the gold dress, those kind of illusions.
Yeah.
Well, I think the best one was the Laurel and Yanny, because like,
but I think that one is as a result of like different pitches and basically your age, because you can't hear some pitches as well, or you can hear some pitches better. Then one sound is more dominant than others. It's just basically like music theory, because every single sound has dominant and subdominant tones or whatever. So you might hear some different tones based on. But anyways, back to the actual topic. You know, time travel. Like you were saying, right? They're saying there's no way to travel back in time, right? But we don't know. We don't know yet. That's the thing. And the interpretation that makes the most sense to me in terms of a time travel model is the many worlds interpretation. But I don't know if my understanding of it is that good, because the way I understand it is, in many worlds interpretation basically is, you basically for every single double probability event, so there's a probability of one thing happening and the probability of another thing happening.
Yeah, they would both happen in different
yeah,
worlds. Yeah.
They both happen, but it splits off into two different universes.
Yeah,
so one
this
does
is
happen, one doesn't.
So I have a good way. Actually, our friend Erwin Schrödinger said this in a speech in Dublin, that his equations seem to describe several different historical events that weren't alternatives, but happening simultaneously. And the only way that was possible is if they were happening at the same time, but in different parallel worlds, or
so it's
the
basically
timelines.
parallel universes or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with many worlds interpretation, if you go back in time, you just basically go back to the past, but a past where you appeared with a time machine there. So I don't know if there's actually any point to time traveling, or what, how the navigation works. Whether if you go back to the future, then you'll actually go into the back to the future that you changed, or whether you go back to your original future, which makes time traveling useless, or whether you can even go back to there
are interesting concepts there.
The past that you changed.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point, because we don't know for sure, which is why a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, and a lot of books have also created their own way. To a certain extent, what I'm going to be saying right now, I'll give you an example with what happens if potentially you go back into the past and change something. One potential thing that could happen out of many is, well, you create a new timeline just by arriving there and by doing something different that hasn't already happened. And so if there's one timeline, let's say you're at this point, you do something different.
Technically, the timeline already exists, right?
Exactly. So you'll have two different timelines, one of which
you're just going there.
You're just going to the other timeline. Yeah. But again, that's a paradox, because it's not always the case that there already exists another timeline. You could just be creating a new one every time you do something different.
No, but based on the many worlds interpretation, don't all possible paths already exist?
Yeah. That's I should have been more clear about this. This is excluding the many worlds interpretation. If there's only one universe with only one Earth, then every time you change an event, it will create new timelines that you'll be entering, which will be impossible to go back to the previous timeline, because anything you do, it can't. It's like a mug. Once you break the mug, you can't put it back exactly the way it was before. You will still have cracks and stuff, but you can't make it exactly the way it was before. It's similar to that. That's what people are saying could be the potential implications of time travel and going back in time and changing. But I'm not sure how going into the future would work. Like, if I go to the future and come back...
That's the thing. You mean after you go to the past?
Yeah, after I go to the past...
Deal with the future, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. But I don't think we'll ever know, and that'll just be up to our muses. So
yeah.
But on to like actual pop culture, and why I'm so obsessed with many worlds interpretation is well, many more references as time goes on, obviously. But many more references to time travel and such has been, popping up.
Cool.
Not necessarily just because of how long it has existed, but because our technology and knowledge has gotten better as well. So stuff like Interstellar, which you've mentioned before, I know a bit about Interstellar. It's not like I just haven't watched the whole thing, but Steins Gate as well. One of our favorite animes, one of the host's favorite animes. But what do you think? Because this anime is what initially got me into physics, and I went down a whole rabbit hole of time travel, John Titor, who we'll talk about in a bit. But I went down this whole rabbit hole and like CERN, everything, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So what do you think when you first watched it? I mean, and no spoiler.
No spoilers, of course. I just love science fiction shows, and stuff like this really do interest you, because like it takes stuff that already exists, but then they change it up a bit to fit the storyline, and then there's twists and all that kind of stuff. It actually follows physics very well, but at the same time they have their own their own creation with like their own invention with how time works and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
it's like their own science is well thought out.
Yeah, it is, and it
Even though
actually
some of
makes
the technology
sense.
doesn't exist.
It's like stuff
Even
like
though some of the technology doesn't exist.
yeah. It still does make sense. Unlike the Avengers Endgame, which made no sense to how they did the time. Watching that as a physics lover, I was like, that is not how that works. But again, it's just their own fiction stuff. But
If we take it and we put it back in the same place, it will be
It'll be
like
fine.
none of it actually happened.
yeah.
Well, I guess that sort of makes sense, but like.
Well, I guess, but like, yeah.
So the way time travel and Steins Gate work is very interesting because it follows that many worlds interpretation, but then again, it also works on like this string sort of system, where it splits up, right? But sometimes these events all converge into one big event, which is unavoidable for a certain amount of futures, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And basically what time traveling is, because, well, I'm not going to go into much detail, but basically time traveling is just they're able to travel between these strings, essentially. Strings
Yep.
just basically like paths to the future. They're traveling between the strings and trying to get to the string which is in line with their own goal or desirable future, if you know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
they go through this whole show.
I know you don't watch The Flash, and you have, but The Flash does this very well with how it handles time travel and that kind of stuff. I mean, because The Flash, obviously, you're a speedster. Of course, they also have their own fictional element, creating their own science. But a lot of it actually makes sense and is quite relatable to actual physics. Like, if you were to change an event, go back in time, obviously. I think this might be a bit of a spoiler. I'm not going to say it, but basically the main character, Barrelin, does something, goes back in time, changes something, a big thing, a big event, and that creates a whole new timeline with everything different, people he knew in his original life he didn't know in this life, and there was stuff, he was losing his speed. He created a flashpoint paradox. Yeah, that's quite commonly known as the flashpoint in the DC universe.
The only thing I'm triggered about in Flash is just basically like they're trying to mix drama in, and I'm like,
yeah, that is true. I'm also only in for the actual science bit stuff. But I mean, like, another interesting thing that they discuss with the Flash is like crap, I just lost my train of thought there. I don't even know what happened. I was gonna say something.
Flash.
Doesn't really help that.
As if that helps. Yeah,
that doesn't.
That's true.
Actually, you know what? I'll come back to that. Why don't you go something? I honestly it just disappeared. I was thinking, and then it just went off. Yeah.
I'll talk about John Titor.
All right. Okay.
Which I know. I don't think you've done much research into this, obviously, but do you remember who John Titor is?
Yeah, he's that one. Apparently, he claimed to have come from 2038. I think came back in time, and he had some predictions of the future.
This is actually a real thing, right? John Titor actually exists in our reality, supposedly, and so Steins Gate took a real event and used it, based their stuff around it.
Yeah.
Because some of the science that John Titor was talking about, very interesting. Because he was on the forum boards, I think 4chan. I don't even know anymore. He was talking to people who was responding, what's the time travel technology like? What's this? And he responded. He tells people about it. And some of these responses were integrated into anime, but so the time travel technology he talks about is using a mini black hole.
Yep.
I don't know exactly how this works, but basically, like, you're just in there and then you go back in time. That's the idea, right?
Because I mean, like, again, with black holes, we don't really know what happens when we go inside one or what happens when we observe one. It's commonly known as a singularity as well. So, yeah.
The interesting thing is, I mean, you can't really prove this as a hoax nor whether it's true or not. It's debatable, but some of the things he talks about, very interesting, very in depth. Like, he has some of the charts and blueprints of his machinery and everything. It's super in depth, super thought out. Maybe you can do some reading on John Titor and everything, but it's a bit scary because what he talks about is, I mean, this is kind of a bit of a spoiler for Steins Gate, so it's kind of unavoidable when you talk about John Titor.
Yeah.
But if you haven't watched Steins Gate, you might want to skip ahead of this part. But basically, what John Titor says is he went back to retrieve this computer, blah blah blah, which can decrypt stuff, because in the future, CERN, like the ones who are using the LHC, CERN in the future is an evil organization who have been using the LHC to create mini black holes, and they've made a time travel machine and have created a dystopia. And basically, he needs that computer to decode their stuff and fight back against CERN. And that's the whole idea of John Titor.
You know, an interesting.
And some of these ideas, yeah.
Yeah, I was just actually talking about the LHC. It was reported, I think, last year that the Large Hadron Collider in CERN actually released a time warp, because they were colliding some particles. I'm not actually sure what particles they were doing, but it resulted in a time warp that basically had a major blackout in like the entire city. And it was such an interesting thing as well, because like when we think about time warps, I'm not even exactly sure what a time warp is, but it's basically like you have a space time. Yeah, search it up. LHC's time warp. It was such an interesting concept.
Bro, wait, maybe John Titor is actually right. Oh no.
And an interesting thing is John Titor predicts a lot of these stuff, and it's quite interesting because the LHC can, I think by following theory, can open up singularities if it's not stabilized. Because when particles aren't stable, it can potentially create a black hole, according to a lot of the theories that exist in physics.
I might go back down this rabbit hole because this is like, you know, the conspiracy stuff that
yeah.
In the end, it is. But yeah, basically what CERN does in the LHC is they accelerate particles and smash them into each other to discover subatomic particles and this, you know, the standard model and stuff, which they found the Higgs boson, I think, in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they said they cannot make black holes, some theorize that they can, which comes down to what John Titor is saying again. So very interesting, very scary as well. But I think we're gonna skip ahead of this now that this got me super spooked. But we can talk about wormholes, right?
Yeah, we can. But just before we do that, let me quickly explain what many world interpretation was, because I think we didn't quite establish what that theory was. Of course, I'm not going to be explaining the whole thing because that's a big topic. But essentially, let's say that it's basically the many worlds interpretation is by this man called Hugh Everett, and it's where there's several mainstream interpretations. It's from quantum mechanics.
Everett Wheeler interpret.
Everett Wheeler. Yeah, it is. Basically, he said that certain observations cannot be predicted absolutely. Instead, there is a range of possible observations, each with a different probability. So if I was to roll a die right now, I have a 1/6 chance of it rolling 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
But
Everett Wheeler.
Yeah, so I could roll a 1 right now, but at the same time, in a parallel universe, I could be rolling a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and that could lead to different results. But that's basically what the many worlds interpretation, the basis of it is. And I actually have a recommendation for this afterwards. Based on the many worlds interpretation. If you want me to say now, it's Michio Kaku's Parallel Worlds, man. Dude, I know you've read it. I think I've lent it to you. I think you have it with you. But
I have
it's a really good book. Michio Kaku, famous physicist. He's a great author as well. He talks about this, the many worlds interpretation, as well as the parallel worlds having a multiverse. Like, it's very interesting, and it might end up putting you in a rabbit hole just like Kevin did, but it has that certain woke element to it, as well as bringing up interesting ideas that you can think about in the shower or something.
So now onto wormholes, right? So you know and basically wormholes are just they're just holes, right? To basically another place in space or time. That's what a wormhole is, and people theorize that wormholes are actually a possible method to time travel, which brings us into the pop culture references of wormhole and why many people are very triggered when movies use wormholes. Because let me do a demonstration right now. Now this is space and time. If this is location A, we put a hole through here, and this is location B. Now, the fastest way between them is to travel a straight line. But if you fold the space and you stab it straight through, that's what a wormhole is.
Yeah.
And that's just basically in every single sci-fi every single sci-fi movie nowadays, and I think people are sick and tired of that explanation.
Yeah, it definitely is, because I've seen it everywhere. We've seen it everywhere, especially in my favorite film of all time, Interstellar. That's exactly how they explain how they go from one area to another without having to wait 1,000 million years. But I guess since I don't think we've witnessed a wormhole, or I don't think we've seen one, at least. Not like a black hole. We've seen a black hole, but we haven't seen a wormhole. And we haven't interacted with one either. So while the theory says we go from one location to another as a shortcut through the wormhole, we don't really know if that's exactly what it does, because it could do many other things.
We don't actually know what's behind a black hole, so it could be possible that black holes are actually wormholes and you go the other side, whatever. Or it could be possible you just get torn to shreds, like just as we know through the theory of black holes as well, right? But there's stuff about like white holes being the exits to wormholes, blah blah blah. There's also like how is information preserved? There's something about like information conservation or something, because if the black hole shreds everything, then the information is gone or something. So where does that information go? I don't know much about this. I've only done some light reading, so you guys can
actually
check it out if you want.
Yeah, and if you might, let me just pinch in my opinion here. Again, I'm gonna go back to Interstellar because they do this in a very interesting way. The person who Christopher Nolan was working with as like an advisor, like a science advisor, is Kip Thorne, who worked with two of the most accurate science fiction movies of all time, which has been official from
Thorne and Wheeler.
Is Contact and Interstellar. Contact talks about black holes and wormholes, what Kevin is talking about. Contact is a fantastic film. Again, starring Matthew McConaughey. It's very, very interesting. Works with the time, works with the black hole and that kind of interesting stuff. And Kip Thorne, what he does with Interstellar is like, there's this scene where, I'm not spoiling this stuff, but it isn't much of a spoiler, but a piece of, like a data packet is sent through the black hole, through this robot called TARS. And they don't know what happens after it goes through that black hole, right? Like, it's just, they receive no more signals. But then that specific part is based on true science, because that's what we know. That's what we think we know, at least from our theories. But what happens after is something that they created through their own equations and their kind of assumptions. It's that there's this new dimension, and it's like there's these people. It's like I don't know if it's aliens, but there's like the
4D dimension.
Yeah, with like,
and then like being outside of the plane of existence.
Yep. And that was a very interesting way of, because like apparently gravity was the answer. Like gravity was the base, the whole what is it? freaking dimension. It was the dimension was gravity. That's what the 5D was, I think. I'm not sure if it's 5 or 4D because 4D is apparently the Tesseract having like a cube in a cube, but 5D was apparently what the movie was a part of, which is like gravity, and you're manipulating gravity to do some stuff. Again, it's concepts that they don't even understand, so neither do I. But it's just interesting to think because we can bring up ideas like these and think about its potential existence with our world.
Also, just to correct myself, it's not Thorne Wheeler, it's Thorne Missner, and they both co-wrote the book called Gravitation. Which is a very good read as well. It's very tough, but I believe it's a good read.
Like, I think before we go, like, wormholes and black holes, there's something that I think I wanted to say before relating to time, was time loops. So I'm pretty sure we have all watched movies or like have seen these videos where there's time loops. A famous one is Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Doctor Strange, where there's time loops and that kind of stuff. While it's entertaining to watch, a lot of scientists claim that it's not really possible to have a time loop that is less than a second or something like that, because you can't have, because the existence of time loops basically goes against the law of time. There's actually a law of time, which I'm not sure what it is. Again, I'm not speaking with any knowledge of this, but based on what I know, time loops aren't really possible because of it being forbidden with the law of time, and that you physically can't keep repeating something that will block itself. It's like a paradox. But what I'm saying probably doesn't make any sense, but like, that is what time loops are.
The idea is basically like magical, right?
Yeah, and like Doctor Strange, he just has like a one kind of badge, and if you do this, there's like time goes back in time. While it's nice to have a fantasy of magic,
it was like
yeah, he does something like that. It just, his thing goes on. But it's not possible. I mean, I don't even think we can have a stone that's a time stone, and it manipulates time, because that is not how things work. At least that's what we think. Again, like Kevin said, time could be a tangible thing. It could just be something that's stored somewhere in the universe. But is it though?
It's in a hard drive. It's a hard drive of 11 petabytes. Time itself stored in a hard drive, SSD. In the world's greatest computer. Basically, something interesting as well. We're probably going to be finishing up soon, but in regards to space and time in general, is the scale that we know is far smaller than what actually exists. So our knowledge as the human race could be proportional to the scale in comparison. This isn't a very good explanation, but think of how smaller Earth is compared to the rest of the universe, and think how long we've been on Earth compared to how long the universe has existed. Very small, right? So that could be in proportion to how much we actually know about the universe.
Yeah,
it's such a small portion.
I mean, that's the whole thing about us. I mean, goes back to us understanding and experiencing time, because like we could just not have the mental capacity or the ability to comprehend some of the ideas that are behind time, black holes, wormholes, time travel.
Like Sungwoo said, right?
Yeah, like exactly how Sungwoo said.
Limit on
yes,
brain.
There's a physical limit that we have as humans on understanding and knowledge, and we don't know when we can surpass that limit. But there are just some things that we can't. Yeah, or whether you can, or it is what it is. That's when we say that. It is what it is, because
it is what it is.
It is what it is. It's because we have no control over it.
At the same time.
3, 2, 1. It is what it is.
What it is. No, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Okay. So then again, this whole scale and how and basically how little we know, how much there's to explore, and how precise it is, how small this window of time is that we're able to observe everything, is the reason why, again, I'm fascinated with physics. Because even though, we won't get to see everything, space and time, I mean, even though we won't get to see everything, right? This window is so small, this life is so small, and everything came together to put me in this place right now, this time. So, as this is one of my favorite quotes to say, like, in recent times, is, who am I to deny the brilliance of the universe? If the universe put me here with the eyes able to see everything, to perceive everything, it's my job to appreciate the brilliance of the universe. So who am I to deny it?
Definitely. Yeah. It's such.
So,
yeah. No. That's definitely a wonder. I mean, everything is exactly how it is. Everything is just perfect. You know what I mean? That's one of the interesting things about physics, is that everything that is needed for us to live, everything that is required for this Earth to stay in its orbit, it's just exact to the decimal. That's how exact it is. Everything is just perfect. What are the chances of that?
Even more so with this explanation of many worlds, interpretation, parallel worlds, what are the chances that the parallel world that we're living in is this one? It could have been a world where gravity is, 0.01 times stronger, and then everything is nothing. Everything's crushed together. Or it would have been where gravity's weaker, nothing clumped together, or whatever.
Yeah, this could be the perfect world out of all
numbers, constants are all perfect, such a way that we're here. It's amazing.
Yeah, maybe that's an interesting thought, because like even in science, when we're doing experiments, we don't automatically get the best result, right? We get through trial and error, we do many, and then we get one good experiment, like one good output. Potentially, the world is like we have multiple universes, and out of all these universes, the one we're living in right now was the one that was just perfect. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, with having the hard bed.
That's not exactly accurate, but
I'm
saying there's only, theoretically, this is the only reality that is exactly like this. The only one.
It's a unique, special edition.
I think it's amazing, yeah. And
knowing,
the more I begin to know about physics, the more I appreciate it even more, and the more I appreciate the world. Back in the day, I used to only like space, blah blah blah. But then when I look at these things and I start to understand how they actually fit into everything, just cool.
Yeah, some people just like seek for that sense of what is it? Sense of fulfillment or something like that. Completeness. And you get that with physics, because it's such a, because you're not limited to like only one area in physics. Like I could love physics but hate magnets or something like that, because it's such a wide subject. It's just, we could go on days talking about physics because we love that subject. But I'm pretty sure, Kev, there are stuff in physics that you don't like, but you search for your love and passion for physics elsewhere, such as astronomy.
But I feel like everything is interesting. Everybody, everything is interesting, but it's all about the storytelling. The storytelling is the most important thing, because whether or not the start or the end is amazing, if you can tell an amazing story, it doesn't matter what the start is, it doesn't matter what the result is. If you can tell an amazing ass story, that's gonna be amazing. If I tell a story about how I just, or I fell down the stairs, I went to the hospital, blah blah blah, but if some comedian tells the story, it'll be funny. If somebody else tells a story, it'll be interesting, blah blah blah. It all depends on the story and how you represent the idea. And it's the same thing with subjects, right? There's something interesting about everything, about English, even though I don't like English and the way they teach it in school. The very idea of language in communicating to other people itself is interesting. Psychology as well. I don't know if they teach it well in schools, but the idea itself of learning about human behavior is interesting. Economics, I don't know if they teach it well in school either, but the idea of economics itself, learning about how people organize things, or how people, how money flows, everything with the way people think, is interesting. The way biology works, about humans, living things, interesting, blah blah. And you can just keep going on and on. You know? What do you think about that?
No, that's definitely the right answer. That's why people like generally, like for instance, I didn't really like chemistry because I didn't understand it, probably because I wasn't taught well. But like when we're doing physics now in IB, I look at these things that sometimes we have some links to chemistry, right? I do up some reading on my own. I'm like, wait, that's actually interesting. That's quite, and I do some reading and I look at it and I'm like, this is interesting stuff. It could be that you're just exposed in the wrong way to the content, but like everything, to me, I question a lot of things, right? Whether or not I get the answers,
probably because of me, but
yeah, probably. But like just questioning, just asking why, would give you a lot of things to think of. Like I don't know, there's a lot of things you can ask, but like even in class when you're learning something, even if you don't understand it, you can just ask why, and asking why just makes you want to learn more, makes you want to understand it more, because then you'd actually be able to look at things in different perspectives, and that would show understanding, that would show knowledge. And some people might not have that interest, but it just, it's interesting, if you know what I mean. You might not be the same person, you might not be me, you might not be Kev. I'm sure Kevin has more interests in other things, and he might approach to that specific area, and I also might be interested in something different. But like, we all genuinely have that question, that want to learn about a specific area, because we're just curious on how it works, generally because of personal experience. Like, I might have encountered with something and I have a question based on that. Maybe if that event didn't occur, I probably wouldn't have a question, right? Like scamming, like we talked about it last week. If I had never got scammed in Minecraft, I'd probably have never thought about ways to get stuff.
And then
yeah, exactly. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at how subjects and things around us work.
All right. Well, I guess I think this is more satisfying to end it right here, as opposed to like, okay, so now on to the recommendation section. So I think maybe because we've done this several times, it's been several weeks that we've done the podcast in a row, that we're more used to it, more natural. And I don't know if the format will change permanently, but for this week, this is where we'll end it off. If you would like to check out any more of our content, you can go to Adrian's YouTube channel or mine. We'll put it in the description. I do physics videos. Adrian does I don't know what videos.
We'll see soon.
Posting recently.
I'll upload.
I don't post, but it's one type of videos. But anyways, check out any of the links if you're interested in anything.
In the description
down below. Check it. Yeah. Check.
Oh, and if you're listening to this in Spotify,
subscribe, like,
check it out.
Comment,
YouTube.
Yeah. If you're listening on Spotify, check out our YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, check out our Spotify. Vice versa. But thank you guys for watching, and
thank you very much.
See you in the next week.
Goodbye.